Before we jump into the show, I want to let you know that Podcast Branding Academy is now open. This is my online school for podcasters. That's right, for any podcasters, new or old, looking to learn the latest approaches to branding, marketing, and audience growth. We offer group coaching through an easy monthly membership. Don't have a podcast yet? We've got you covered too. Grab our free Podcasting 101 starter kit. Go to podcastbrandingacademy.com. Before July 1st, for our founding members discount, you'll also get live trainings, video tutorials, workbooks, one-on-one coaching, and more. You don't want to miss this. Head to podcastbrandingacademy.com.
Brands on Brands.
Hey everyone, this week we're talking about the podcast listener journey. Check it out.
In a world where content is king and your reputation is your brand, how do you build a brand that matters? Welcome to Brands on Brands, a home for those that think different and push their boundaries. This is where branding that matters lives. Now, here is your host, Brandon Birkmeyer.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Brands on Brands. I'm Brandon Birkmeyer, your personal branding coach. And today we're talking about the listener journey, thinking about how do you as a podcast audience go through the whole world of podcasting, find the shows you're going to listen to, and then find your favorites and become fans, right? How do you, as podcasters, bring people down that journey, bring people down a road that leads them to us? That's what we're talking about today. Before we jump into it, if this is your first time listening to the show, make sure to go to brandsonbrands.com and sign up for our newsletter where every week we share these tips from you, from the show, and bring them to you with our hottest takes on what's happening in the world of podcasting, personal branding, and content marketing. And if you are looking to start a show yourself or get help with your show, make sure to go to podcastbrandingacademy.com and check out our resources there. Now, let's get into our show today.
Brands on Brands.
Today's show, the listener journey. The listener journey, just to define it, the customer journey has been around forever. The listener journey, follows the same kind of thought, which is this is the interactions that people have with your brand, right? It is how people come across you and interact with your brand, your show over the course of time. So how do strangers become listeners, right? That's the first question. And then how do listeners become fans? That's the journey we're on today. This is actually what I talked about when I was speaking at PodFest. It's a concept that I brought to them, and I wanted to bring it to you guys, the loyal listeners, today as well. So we're starting there. How do strangers become listeners? How do listeners become fans? And I want to start with the standard model, right? It's a model that goes from attention to interest, to desire, to action. This is a standard marketing model. It's called AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action, that most brands, when they're looking at how they build loyal customers, they look at this. They say, how do we take people who don't know us? How do we get them to pay attention so that they see us? And then how do we go from them seeing us to having interest in our products? And then how do they go from being interested in our products to actually considering buying us and saying, you know what, I'm kind of interested in getting this today. And then how do you get them to take action, which is, I need this right now. I'm going to go into the store and do it, right? And this helps us decide, okay, what do we need for broad awareness? What do we need to help people convert? What do we need people to come back? And it's a marketing funnel, right? It's how people think about it. It's based on 3 human capacities that are learnings from lots and lots of research for many, many years that are very simple, right? It says the way we act is connected between our thoughts and our emotions, right? So our thoughts are connected to our feelings, are connected to our actions. And that model plays into how we build and convince people to do things and sell things and buy things and whatever else it is, right? So you might have heard of this model. To people who aren't familiar, the other way it's been explained is know, like, trust, right? You have to know something and then you have to like it before you can trust it, right? That model works for podcasters as well. If you're trying to build fans, you need them to pay attention to you so that they know you. You need to get them to show some kind of interest or desire, and then they have to take an action to actually listen and subscribe to your show. The challenge with this listener journey is that it takes time, right? It takes time for people to go from listeners to fans. And overcoming that challenge can be tiresome because at the end of the day, how do you bring people along this journey with you? It takes forever, right? Because it's not in one day that suddenly people go from not knowing you to being a huge fan, right? That takes time. So what I'm introducing, or what I introduced, is this concept to overcome that challenge called reoccurring attention models, right? Reoccurring attention models. Now, one-time attention models would be the opposite of that. One-time attention models would be things that you do to get attention for your show one time, right? People saw something, they looked at it, they were curious for a second, and then when you did that thing and it was done, they never paid attention again, or it was done, it was finished, right? So for example, podcast guesting, right, is a huge way that people promote podcasts. When you go on someone else's podcast to talk about your show, you get the one-time attention of whoever listened to the show in that moment. And then typically that happens within 1 or 2 days, and that show doesn't air again. So after that initial listening, you usually don't get much attention after that, if any at all. So that's a one-time model. Same thing with social media. In most cases, you post a post on social media, people can see it for the first day or so, and then it is buried in your feed of other things and in their feed of other things, if it's even shown to your audience at all, right? The average, I think, Instagram post is shown to like 3% of the people that are following you. So that one-time attention means that the effort gets intensified, because now you have to do these things over and over and over again. Every time you need more attention for your business or your show or your podcast, you have to go back in and I'm going to do another podcast interview. I'm going to do another social media post over and over and over again. It puts you on this enormous hamster wheel that you can never get off of. What I would like to see is more people building recurring attention models, right? What can you do one time that after you finished building it, people see it over and over and over again, right? This is something that huge brands that I've worked with before have done. It's that most brands out there have figured this out and do this over time. So think about it like this. If you only had 1 hour per week to build awareness and be seen, what would you do, right? Because our time is limited. So if you had an hour to spend every week to promote your show, what would you do? What I would suggest is, instead of using that hour to post on social media and go podcast guesting, which are still good things, by the way, we need both of these things. But this time, take that hour and use it to build an attention asset, right? How do you get attention over and over again? You build an attention asset. Here's what that looks like. Here's a key trait of an attention asset. It is findable, it is shareable, and it is consistent. So something like even recording a podcast is something that is findable, shareable, and consistent. I have episodes that I continue to share with people over and over again. Someone asks me a question and I have an answer that I've already recorded. I send them my podcast episode. You can find that podcast within the podcast players, right? YouTube also is a great example of this. It's actually a better example of this because YouTube has algorithm that constantly shows your videos to new people if they're searching for that niche thing that you categorized your videos for. Blogs are the same thing. Blogs are an attention asset that is recurring, right? You write it once, and if Google search or any other search engine likes it, they're going to show that post to more people. That's findable. Shareable, on the other hand, means, is the content that you're creating something that people want to tell other people about, right? Is your content going to end up on a best of the best list, right? Is your show going to end up in a top 10 list that people are creating as their favorite shows? What can you do to get on those lists? Can you bring your show to someone's attention so that you can get on those lists? Can you ask other friends and podcasters or content creators to make a list that includes you, right? Can you create how-to content? How-to content is the most shareable content right now out there on the internet because most of us are trying to figure something out. So building something that answers questions, that solves problems, is easily some of the most shareable content out there. The last is things that are quotable, right? those little memes and quotes and things that people create, that for one, but actually more importantly, things like trends or news or facts and statistics, those types of information are things that people like to share and refer to. So what can you do to do your own survey, to create your own news or share your own trends? That information is something people might refer to and say, here's what's, happening in this industry based on what I just saw on this other blog. And if you want to do your own survey, most surveys are under 1,000 people that people refer to. So if you can find a few hundred people, you might have information that's really interesting to share with people that they can refer to. And if people are linking to that on your website, on their website, they're referring to your website and this fact, and they're sourcing you as the source. That is telling the internet, that's telling Google search that your website is super important and people should check it out for that topic, right? That is building an attention asset, and that builds you consistent attention over time. So an idea that I've shared on the stage, which I'm sharing with you guys today, is if you want to take action in this, take a simple step. Get out there and just write one blog post, right? If you're a podcaster, write one blog post that has a few criteria. Make sure it's long form cornerstone content. What does that mean? It means that it's content that is 1,500 words or more that speaks to a key idea that your show is all about. Something that you don't mind, that if it gains attention, that you would continue to update that blog every year, that you would build on it, add more information to it, make it more useful, add more resources to it, whatever it is. Build one long form cornerstone content and see if it sticks. See if you start getting traffic from it. Make it highly linkable, right? Make sure it's got some kind of information in for it, and then direct traffic to it. Tell people about it. Get other people to link to it and post to it. Go to other pages on your website and direct those pages to that page. Usually your newest page gets a little attention. So if you have a new blog post, direct that new blog post, have some links in it to the old blog post, right? Anything you can do to bring attention to that most important cornerstone content over and over again is going to help. There's easy ways to do that. If you guys want to learn more about that, I have a whole session on repurposing on some of my previous episodes. Just go to my site and type in the word repurposing and you'll find some of that. But that's some of the easiest way to get going with this idea. And then beyond that, the last thing I would say is another good piece of this recurring attention model is that once you are getting the attention, that you then find a way to control the direct communication with your audience, right? How do you get them to listen again to your podcast? Don't just count on them going back into a podcast app and finding you again. You have to collect their information so that you can talk to them. And that means typically some form of email or direct message or text or phone number if you got that, or an address even, right? Direct mail. But for most of us, it's going to be email. It's the most common and the one that most people can build as podcasters. So start with something of value, right? This isn't new information, but start with something of value, some kind of lead magnet, downloadable PDF, checklist, whatever it is. And as I hear your eye rolls as I say that, you don't have to be the one that builds these terrible things. You could build something better, right? What is something that you would actually be interested in getting? If this format isn't good enough for something that you'd want, change it. Make it some kind of mini video course or something that involves a phone call, something that you yourself would actually want. Make it better to the point where you would actually use it yourself, right? Give something of value in exchange for an email so that you can now nurture your audience and send communication out every week or multiple times a week. And you can tell them, hey, another awesome podcast episode is out. You should listen to it. Usually the average email open rate is between 20, 30%. And you can be in front of your audience and say, this is what's out this week, and then direct them to your podcast to generate listenership. It also is one of the better selling tools. So if you have an offer, if you have a product or service in your PS line of email, you can mention it. And some of those listeners can even convert to become customers. That's how you get started building this kind of reoccurring attention model, using the platforms out there that bring attention in consistently, and then controlling the conversation by getting people's emails and being able to communicate with them over and over again in a place that you control, right? That's what the big idea is for today's show. That's what I spoke about on the stage. So you are hearing it here as well. And I appreciate you guys listening. That's why I'm giving you the same things that I talk about on stage. There are ways to do this. If you guys are wondering, like, how do you take a podcast, convert it to a blog? I've definitely covered that in depth. But you can always reach out to me. You can always go to brandsonbrands.com/coach, set up a call. I help people with this. I help people design full seasons of their content. I help people figure out their repurposing, their marketing systems for their shows. All that is something I help with. Or you can always just join the Podcast Branding Academy, which is a monthly membership. It's less than $50 a month, and you get all of my content and check-ins with me along the way. If you want to be a part of that podcast community, go to podcastbrandingacademy.com and check out the memberships section for that. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys listening. That's all I got for you today. As always, I appreciate your time, and I will catch you next time.
You've just taken your marketing knowledge to another level with this episode of Brands on Brands. But we have plenty more ways to help you build a brand that matters. Head over to brandsonbrands.com for resources, as well as access to our blogs, videos, and exclusive coaching sessions with your host. Be sure to visit brandsonbrands.com.